The blue and red lights painted the Dallas highway in violent streaks of color. Twisted metal and shattered glass littered the asphalt. Two men lay motionless on the cold pavement, their rescue truck still flashing its amber warning lights into the January night. And speeding away from the carnage, a silver BMW disappeared into the darkness, its driver leaving behind not just a horrific crash scene, but the ruins of what had once been a promising NFL career. This was January 14, 2001. And the man behind the wheel was Dwayne Goodrich, a Dallas Cowboys cornerback whose life was about to change forever. If you are new to this channel, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, like this video and comment where you are watching from. The scene that night was chaos. Two Good Samaritans, Joseph Wood and Demmett Matthews, had stopped on the highway to help victims of an earlier accident. They were selflessly putting their own safety at risk to help strangers when the unthinkable happened. A vehicle came barreling down the highway at speeds investigators would later estimate between 85 and 100 miles per hour. The driver never hit the brakes, never swerved. The BMW slammed into both men with devastating force, killing them instantly before fleeing the scene. Within hours, police would trace the vehicle to Dwayne Goodrich. The young NFL player who had everything going for him had just become a fugitive. But how did a talented athlete with a bright future end up in this nightmare? To understand that night, we have to go back to where it all began. Dwayne Goodrich was born on May 29, 1978, in Oak Lawn, Illinois, a suburb just southwest of Chicago. Growing up in the tight-knit community, young Dwayne was far from the stereotypical troubled youth. He came from a stable, middle-class family that emphasized education, discipline, and hard work. His parents instilled in him the values of responsibility and accountability from an early age. As a child, Dwayne was athletic and competitive, but he was also a good student. His neighborhood wasn't plagued by the violence and poverty that marked many urban areas. Instead, Oak Lawn offered him opportunities, good schools, organized sports programs, and a community that looked out for its young people. Dwayne took full advantage of these opportunities. In school, Dwayne was known as a friendly, well-mannered kid who got along with just about everyone. Teachers described him as respectful and focused. He wasn't the class clown or the troublemaker. He was the kid who showed up, did his work, and excelled in athletics. His childhood friends remember him as competitive but fair, the kind of kid who wanted to win but wouldn't cheat to get there. At Harold L. Richards High School in Oak Lawn, Dwayne Goodrich began to truly shine. Standing at 6 feet tall with exceptional speed and agility, he became a standout defensive back for the Bulldogs football team. But what separated Dwayne from other talented athletes was his football intelligence. He could read offensive plays like he was reading a book, anticipating routes before receivers made their cuts. During his high school career, Goodrich wasn't just a one-sport athlete. He also competed in track and field, where his blazing speed in the sprints caught the attention of college scouts. His 40-yard dash times were consistently impressive, clocking in the low 4.4-second range, elite speed by any standard. Off the field, Dwayne maintained strong grades. He understood that athletics alone wouldn't secure his future. His parents made sure he knew that education was his foundation, and football was the opportunity built on top of it. He took honors classes and was involved in student activities. Teachers and coaches alike praised his maturity and leadership qualities. By his senior year, Goodrich had become one of the most sought-after defensive back prospects in Illinois. College recruiters from across the country came to Oak Lawn to watch him play. Major programs from the Big Ten, Big 12, and SEC all expressed interest. For a kid from a Chicago suburb, the world was opening up in extraordinary ways. In 1996, Dwayne Goodrich made one of the biggest decisions of his young life. He committed to the University of Tennessee Volunteers. It was a prestigious program with a winning tradition, and for Goodrich, it represented both an athletic and academic opportunity that aligned perfectly with his goals. At Tennessee, Goodrich didn't have to wait long to make an impact. As a freshman, he earned playing time in the Volunteers secondary, a testament to his talent and work ethic. The coaching staff quickly recognized that they had something special in the kid from Illinois. He had the physical tools, certainly, but he also had the mental approach to the game that coaches dream about. During his time at Tennessee, Goodrich studied hard, majoring in psychology. He was genuinely interested in understanding how people think, what motivates behavior, and how the mind works under pressure. Ironically, this academic interest would later be scrutinized in the context of his own decisions on that fateful January night. On the field, Goodrich continued to develop into one of the top cornerbacks in college football. He had excellent coverage skills, rarely getting beaten deep. His speed allowed him to recover if a receiver got a step on him, and his instincts helped him rack up interceptions and pass breakups. By his junior year, he was starting regularly for the Volunteers. The 1998 season would prove to be magical for Tennessee, and for Goodrich personally. The Volunteers went undefeated, finishing 13-0 and capturing the national championship. Goodrich was a key contributor to one of the best secondaries in college football that season. He played in the Fiesta Bowl, where Tennessee defeated Florida State 23-16 to claim the title. For Goodrich and his teammates, they had reached the pinnacle of college football. But even as he celebrated the championship, Goodrich was looking ahead. He knew that NFL scouts were watching, and he knew that his junior season would be crucial in determining his draft stock. He returned for his senior year in 1999 determined to prove he belonged at the next level. His senior season was outstanding. Goodrich recorded multiple interceptions, defended numerous passes, and showed scouts that he had the consistency and reliability NFL teams demand. He ran a 4.42-second 40-yard dash at the NFL Combine, confirming what everyone already knew. He had elite speed. Scouts praised his technique, his football IQ, and his character. Teams interviewing him came away impressed by his maturity and professionalism. As the 2000 NFL Draft approached, Dwayne Goodrich was projected to be selected somewhere in the second or third round. For a kid from Oak Lawn who had worked his entire life for this opportunity, the dream was about to become reality. On April 16, 2000, Dwayne Goodrich's life changed forever, but in the way he had always hoped. The Dallas Cowboys, one of the NFL's most storied franchises, selected him in the second round with the 49th overall pick. The Cowboys were looking to rebuild their secondary, and they saw Goodrich as a cornerstone piece for their future. The moment was overwhelming. Goodrich had achieved what millions of young athletes dream about, but only a tiny fraction ever accomplish. He was now a professional football player for America's team. The financial security, the prestige, the opportunity to compete at the highest level, it was all there waiting for him. Jerry Jones, the Cowboys' owner, personally welcomed Goodrich to the organization. The coaching staff, led by head coach Dave Campo, immediately began working with their new cornerback, teaching him the complexities of NFL offenses and defensive schemes. Everything was more complex, faster, and more demanding than college football, but Goodrich was ready for the challenge. His rookie contract, while modest by today's standards, was still life-changing money for a 22-year-old. He signed a deal worth approximately $2.3 million over 4 years, with a signing bonus of around $630,000. For a kid whose parents had worked regular jobs to provide a middle-class life, this was generational wealth. He could take care of his family, secure his own future, and live comfortably while pursuing his passion. During his rookie season in 2000, Goodrich appeared in all 16 games, primarily on special teams and in backup defensive back roles. He recorded 13 tackles and showed flashes of the ability that had made him a second-round pick. The Cowboys' coaching staff was pleased with his progress. They saw him as a future starter who was learning the NFL game and developing his skills. Off the field, Goodrich seemed to be handling the transition to professional football well. He hadn't developed a reputation as a troublemaker. He wasn't showing up in nightclubs or getting into legal trouble. By all accounts, he was a young man who understood the opportunity he'd been given and was working hard to make the most of it. His teammates liked him. He was friendly, coachable, and professional. The veterans appreciated that he wasn't a cocky rookie who thought he knew everything. The coaches valued his work ethic and attention to detail. Everything seemed to be on track for Goodrich to have a long, successful NFL career. But beneath the surface, there were elements of Goodrich's life that would soon converge in the most tragic way possible. The 2000 NFL season ended for the Cowboys in disappointment. They finished 5-11, missing the playoffs and raising questions about the direction of the franchise. For Goodrich, it had been a season of learning and limited playing time, but he was optimistic about his future prospects heading into the offseason. January 14, 2001, started as an ordinary night. Goodrich was out in Dallas, and at some point in the evening, he got behind the wheel of his silver BMW. What happened next would haunt him and the families of two innocent men forever. On Highway 75 in Dallas, there had already been a minor accident. Two men, Joseph Wood, 31, and Demmett Matthews, 28, had stopped to help the victims. These weren't professional first responders. They were just good people who saw others in need and decided to help. They were standing on the highway, trying to assist strangers, when Goodrich's BMW came speeding down the road. Investigators would later determine that Goodrich was traveling between 85 and 100 miles per hour in a 55-mile-per-hour zone. He was driving recklessly, dangerously fast for any conditions, let alone a highway where there was already an accident scene. Witnesses reported that the BMW never slowed down, never attempted to avoid the men standing on the road. The impact was catastrophic. Both Wood and Matthews were killed instantly. The force of the collision threw their bodies across the highway. The scene was described by first responders as one of the most horrific they had ever witnessed. Two men who had stopped to do the right thing had paid for their compassion with their lives. And Dwayne Goodrich didn't stop. He fled the scene, leaving behind the carnage, the dying men, and any claim to the character and integrity he had built over his 22 years of life. Police arrived at the scene to find a nightmare. Two men dead, evidence of a high-speed collision, and tire marks indicating the striking vehicle had never attempted to brake. Witnesses provided descriptions of the vehicle, a silver BMW, and a partial license plate number. Within hours, investigators had traced the vehicle to Dwayne Goodrich. The Dallas Police Department moved quickly. They located Goodrich and brought him in for questioning. At first, Goodrich denied being involved in the accident. But the evidence was overwhelming. Damage to his BMW matched the collision. Paint transfer and forensic evidence linked his car to the scene. Witnesses placed a vehicle matching his at the location. Eventually, Goodrich admitted he was the driver. But his explanation raised more questions than it answered. He claimed he thought he had hit a construction barrel, not human beings. He said he panicked and fled the scene. His story was met with skepticism by investigators who couldn't reconcile how someone could hit two adult men at high speed and mistake them for a barrel. Toxicology tests were conducted to determine if Goodrich had been under the influence of alcohol or drugs. The results were negative. He was stone-cold sober. This meant that his reckless driving and decision to flee couldn't be attributed to impairment. He had made these choices with a clear mind, which made them even harder to understand or excuse. On January 15, 2001, just one day after the crash, Dwayne Goodrich was arrested and charged with 2 counts of criminally negligent homicide. The Dallas community was shocked. The Cowboys organization was stunned. And the families of Joseph Wood and Demmett Matthews were devastated, searching for answers that would never fully satisfy their grief. The legal proceedings against Dwayne Goodrich would drag on for over a year. His defense team, well funded by his NFL earnings, fought aggressively to minimize his culpability. They argued that the accident was just that, an accident, and that Goodrich had panicked in the moment, making poor decisions but not acting with criminal intent. Prosecutors saw it differently. They argued that Goodrich's excessive speed, his failure to avoid the victims, and most damningly, his decision to flee the scene, all pointed to criminal negligence at best and possibly more severe charges. They painted a picture of a young man who believed his fame and fortune would protect him from consequences, someone who prioritized his own interests over the lives of others. The families of the victims were present at every hearing, their grief and anger palpable in the courtroom. They had lost sons, brothers, fathers. Joseph Wood left behind family who described him as a generous, kind-hearted person who would help anyone in need. Demmett Matthews was remembered as a devoted family man with a bright smile and an even brighter future. Both had died doing what good people do, helping others. During the trial, forensic experts testified about the speed of impact, the lack of braking, and the physics of the collision. Accident reconstruction specialists showed that Goodrich had ample time to see the men on the highway and avoid them. Witnesses described the BMW speeding past them moments before the crash. The evidence was damning. Goodrich's defense tried to paint him as a young man who made a terrible mistake in a moment of panic. They emphasized his clean record, his good character, and his remorse for what had happened. They brought in character witnesses who testified to his good nature and kind heart. But the prosecution countered with the simple fact that Goodrich had chosen to drive recklessly and then chosen to flee, abandoning dying men on the highway. The trial revealed uncomfortable details. Goodrich had been out late that night, and while not legally intoxicated, questions were raised about his judgment and decision-making. His claim that he thought he hit a construction barrel was thoroughly debunked by experts who testified that the impact would have been obviously different from hitting an inanimate object. In September 2002, after months of legal wrangling, plea negotiations, and public scrutiny, Dwayne Goodrich reached a plea agreement with prosecutors. He pleaded guilty to 2 counts of criminally negligent homicide. In exchange, prosecutors recommended a specific sentence, though the final decision would rest with the judge. The sentencing hearing was emotionally charged. Family members of Joseph Wood and Dement Matthews gave victim impact statements that left the courtroom in tears. They described the holes left in their lives, the children who would grow up without fathers, the holidays that would forever be marked by absence. They spoke directly to Goodrich, asking him how he could leave their loved ones dying on the highway. How could he save himself while abandoning them? Goodrich also addressed the court. He expressed remorse and apologized to the families. He claimed that he would have to live with what he did for the rest of his life. But his words, however sincere they might have been, couldn't change what had happened or bring back the men he had killed. The judge had a difficult decision to make. On one hand, Goodrich was a young man with no prior criminal record who had shown promise and potential. On the other hand, 2 men were dead because of his reckless actions and his decision to flee. The judge ultimately decided that accountability was paramount. On October 18, 2002, Dwayne Goodrich was sentenced to 7.5 years in prison for each count of criminally negligent homicide, to be served concurrently, for a total of 7.5 years. Additionally, he received a 10-year suspended sentence, meaning that if he violated the terms of his release or committed any other crimes, he would face additional prison time. The judge made it clear that while Goodrich had potential for rehabilitation, his actions had taken 2 lives and there had to be serious consequences. The Dallas Cowboys had already released Goodrich from the team. His NFL career, which had seemed so promising just 2 years earlier, was over. The dreams of athletic glory, of Pro Bowl selections and championship rings, had evaporated in a single night of terrible decisions. Dwayne Goodrich was processed into the Texas prison system, becoming inmate number 011875883. The young man who once wore the star of the Dallas Cowboys now wore a prison uniform. His days were no longer filled with practice, film study, and game preparation, but with the monotonous routine of incarceration. The case became a cautionary tale about the responsibilities that come with success and the consequences of poor decisions. Goodrich had been given extraordinary opportunities: a college education at a prestigious university, a national championship, an NFL career, and financial security. But in one night, all of it was lost, and far worse, 2 innocent men lost their lives. The families of Joseph Wood and Dement Matthews continued to grieve and work to keep their loved ones' memories alive. They advocated for highway safety and supported initiatives to help accident victims. Their loss would never be healed by Goodrich's imprisonment, but they took some solace in knowing that justice had been served. For Dwayne Goodrich, prison became a place of reflection. He had time, years of it, to think about the choices he made, the path he took, and the lives he destroyed. Whether he found redemption, whether he truly understood the magnitude of his actions, only those closest to him could say. But the facts remained. A talented athlete with everything to lose had made catastrophic decisions that ended 2 lives and destroyed his own. The story of Dwayne Goodrich serves as a stark reminder that talent and opportunity are not guarantees of success, and that a single night of poor choices can unravel a lifetime of achievement. From the football fields of Oak Lawn to the bright lights of the NFL, Goodrich had climbed the mountain of athletic success. But on a dark January night in Dallas, he fell from that height, taking 2 innocent lives with him into tragedy. The boy who once dreamed of glory became the man who would be remembered for one of the most senseless tragedies in Dallas Cowboys history. And for the families of Joseph Wood and Dement Matthews, January 14, 2001, would forever be the day their world stopped. All because one man chose speed over safety, flight over responsibility, and himself over human decency.